Good morning. Again, I want to thank the praise team for their good work. And, we oftentimes just come and expect things to be done. And these folks, whether they're in the sound booth, the production booth, or up here, they're doing that every week. And really appreciate it. You guys do a good job. Thank you. We are in Philippians 2, if you'd like to turn there in your Bibles. Philippians 2. As we continue this series on marriage, the one. And the question is, again, how can I be the one God uses to bless my spouse or future spouse? So hopefully those who are not married can tuck some of these lessons away and think about, what it might be like someday for you to be married and to prepare for that. No doubt that becoming a blessing to your spouse is a process. It takes time. When you first get married, you may not be as much of a blessing as you need to be because you make a lot of mistakes. There's a lot of adjustment period in there. I know for me that there was, and I have a very patient wife, and so that's why we're together still. She's very, very patient. Whenever we were younger, started serving in the church, we had a lot of energy. We used to take the children, the youth group, to lock-ins, which is where you go and you locked into a Y and a YMCA, and you were there all night long playing basketball, volleyball, and eating pizza. Now that today would just do me in. But at that time, I thought, well, this is good stuff. All night long, just having fun. And yet, whenever I got home one time, after being in a lock-in, Nita and I were there all night long. And, of course, we got home about, 8 o'clock in the morning or something. And I just felt I had a whole lot of things I needed to get done that day. So I thought, I'm just going to catch a couple of hours sleep, get up, and get to it, And so I set my alarm, and I'm sure that Nita warned me about that before I did, but wanted me to get more sleep. But the alarm goes off in a few hours. I don't remember exactly how many hours, but it wasn't too many. And the alarm went off, and I hit that snooze. And then 9 minutes later, I hit that snooze. And 9 minutes later, I hit that snooze. And I don't know how many hours went by because it minutes turned to hours. But I kept hitting that snooze. And when I finally came to, I had one irritated wife. Now, Nita, I've known Nita since we were 15. And very, very few times have I seen Nita angry. She's never really been angry, but she was extremely perturbed with her husband. And so she's not a happy camper. And I wasn't really sure what I needed to do to make up for this one, because, she lost sleep, and it's like, okay, what do I need to do? It's a covenant, isn't it? It's a marriage covenant, it's a relationship, a pledge before God till death do you part. And between the wedding day and the day of your death, there's all these differences. There's all these challenges. There's all these mountains you got to climb together. There's these valleys you got to walk through together. And, it's just sometimes not real easy. But I'll mention a passage of Scripture that I've read already in this series, and I'm going to read it again because I believe it is key in having a great relationship and keeping that covenant, and it guides us through the differences. Philippians 2, 1-4. If you have any encouragement from being united with Christ, any comfort from his love, any fellowship with the Spirit, if any tenderness and compassion, then make my joy complete by being like-minded, having the same love, being one in spirit and purpose. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, but in humility consider others better than yourselves. Each of you should look not only to your own interest, but also to the interest of others. So again, the passage speaks of this idea of doing what is best for our mate. It's striving to put their needs first, not neglecting your own needs, but making sure their needs are met. We all have interests. We all have different ways of looking at things that we like to do or don't like to do. But we have to look after the interest of the one that we married. That has to be something you do on purpose. Because you are not united with Christ, you recognize that he put your interest first, right? I mean, for the Father's sake and for the Father's glory, Jesus came down to put your interest first, to make sure that your soul is saved. He gave himself up for you, to make you right with the Father. And so it's being like-minded in Christ. If we are comforted with his love, if we have fellowship with Spirit, if we have felt his tenderness and compassion, then let us do as he has done for us. We must be a kind of people who are investing in our husband or our wife. We must seek to understand even who they are. We think that we understand people, but we don't. There are so many different layers with people. And it's more than just understanding, what they like to eat and what they like to wear and what movies they like. It takes a lot more effort to learn how a person feels secure and safe in the relationship. For a person to know, hey, they are going to be there no matter what. And I, want to find out how they will be loved and how they feel loved. Sometimes, how we feel loved is very different. There's a conversation that needs to be between husband and wife on a definition of love. Now, we can go to 1 Corinthians 13, and we have that definition. Love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud, it is not rude, it is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered, it keeps no records of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails. So this quality of love is an action. It's something that we do. And as we do that, though, we have to make sure that the person that on the receiving end of love understands that this love was special for them. There's got to be a conversation required to minimize the assumption of how we feel loved. How do you feel loved? This conversation can be challenging because you're expressing something deep. In other words, when tensions rise and counseling is involved, we finally realize that the person, one or the other, just doesn't feel loved. They just don't feel loved. It's like the wife who says to the counselor, I've been married 11 years, I don't feel loved anymore, and the husband is just shocked. What do you mean you don't feel loved? I go to work every day, I work overtime, I provide a house for you, we've got 2 cars, our kids are taken care of. And she's like, well, I still don't feel loved. So open communication minimizes the assumption. For the husband in that point, he thought, well, if I provide stuff for my family, that's how I express love. But people need more than that, and we have to figure out what that is. We have to customize our love for our husband or our wife. So open communication minimizes the assumption of how we feel loved. Communication itself, again, can be challenging, but the scripture says, my dear brothers, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. Here is the key on good communication. If we want to understand what a person feels and how they're receiving love, listen to them. Listen gracefully. If you've been falling short in this area, figure out what you need to do to correct your course. Quick to listen is striving to understand what a person is saying and what a person is not saying. It's both. They're saying one thing and they're not saying something else, but even in between the words and with your eyes, you're watching, you're looking at them, you're trying to, okay, what are they really feeling? What's their body language telling me? Again, too often we listen for the purpose of responding instead of listening to understand that person. So a good listener will ask questions to clarify, what do you mean by that? What is it with this tone that you are using? A good listener is one who seeks to resolve the differences by understanding and then communicating back, and then making the necessary changes that love may be expressed and received. So marriage is more than just, a covenant of living under the same roof. It is about expressing a love to that person like no other. And we have these patterns, don't we, in our lives, the people that we either observe as friends, mentors, maybe our own parents, who give us some clue of how to make that happen. I was blessed with mom and dad where they loved each other very much, and mom was just recently reminiscing about how dad used to come home from work with a bouquet of flowers tucked behind his back and with this big smile on his face. Of course, mom knew exactly what he had back there because that's the way dad delivered flowers. And so he'd bring flowers. This is after being married 40, 50 years. He just did that for mom, and mom always, received that as an expression of his love. Now, I've picked up on that, and, I'm not patting myself on the back, but that's how dad expressed love, so that's what I would do for Nita, not just on Valentine's Day, but simply buy her flowers. I probably don't do it enough, but honestly, I've never asked Nita, hey, is that good? Feel love there, Nita? But she doesn't frown, and she doesn't say you shouldn't have spent the money. So I guess I'm okay, with that one. Now, if you feel like, ladies, that you want flowers and your husband isn't bringing you flowers, don't say, hey, why don't you bring me flowers? And then he brings you flowers, and you go, well, I had to tell you to bring me flowers. Don't do that. Don't do that. But, for some ladies, that's a waste of money. They'd rather you bring a potted plant. They'd rather for you to go for a walk with them. They don't care about that, the flowers. It's dependent how they feel loved. So it's a great challenge. And it means, this intimacy is beyond the physical. It's trying to understand that person so that they, will feel secure and that they will know, yes, you love me, with the kind of love God would approve. Dr. Gary Chapman, wrote a book, The 5 Languages of Love, and I've been asked before if I've ever read this book, and honestly, I have not read it, but I believe that he has some good things to say about love and about how people receive love, because I've witnessed this in the counseling sessions that I've been involved with. And this man is a pastor, a counselor, and he identifies 5 love languages. And I wanted to play this clip. We do have that clip, right? Okay. I wanted to play this clip because I want you to give some thought to how you feel loved. And if you're married, how that other person feels loved. And if you've picked up on this. Now, if you're not married yet, then this is something to give you some, give you a pause to think about. Because part of, saying I do is also helping that person to understand over time, what's really important to you. And so let's just play this clip, and then we'll kind of go back and review.
What's going on, guys? Today's video is going to be on the book, The 5 Love Languages, The Secrets to Love That Last, by Dr. Gary Chapman. So have you ever been in one of those relationships where you think you're doing everything you can to please your partner, but they're still feeling frustrated and unloved? I mean, you're giving them compliments, you work hard all day to bring home the bacon and pay the bills, you give them gifts, and you even do some chores around the house, but they're still feeling unloved. I mean, what more do they want, right? It's incredibly frustrating and annoying. Well, the reason why they aren't feeling loved, in short, is that you're not speaking their love language. The premise of the book is that people don't give and receive love in the same way. Most of us think that the way we want to be loved is how others want to be loved as well, but this is not the case. There are, in fact, 5 love languages. This is huge because if you're not speaking the same language as your partner, then you could be missing the mark completely and not even know it. It's basically the equivalent of a British guy trying to talk to a Chinese guy. It's not going to go well because they're simply not going to understand each other. If you're going to have a strong relationship, you have to know how you and your partner both give and receive love. The 5 love languages are words of affirmation, quality time, receiving gifts, acts of service, and physical touch. Let's go through each one a little deeper. Words of affirmation. Do you like hearing I love you or compliments or meaningful words above all else? Are insults especially detrimental to your relationship? If so, then this is probably your love language. If you discover that this is your partner's love language, make sure you give them genuine compliments and tell them you appreciate them often. The second love language is quality time. Do you value full and undivided attention above all else? One-on-one time with the TV off, the cell phone put away, and no distraction is what makes this type of person feel loved the most. Canceled or postponed dates and failure to listen are especially hurtful to this type. If this is your partner's love language, learn to listen better, make eye contact more, and spend more time with them instead of at the office or glued to your cell phone. Ask them what they'd like to do with you, and then schedule a date to do it. Don't assume what they'd like to do with you. Ask. The third love language is receiving gifts. Sure, we all like getting gifts, but this type of person loves receiving gifts above all else. Gifts to this type of person mean everything because it shows the love, thought, and effort that went into the gift. I'm not talking about materialistic or the cost of the object, but the thought behind it. Missed birthdays, anniversaries, and thoughtless gifts tear this type of person apart. The cost doesn't matter, it's the thought. It can be as simple as a card or some picked flowers or a note saying that you love their eyes. The fourth language is acts of service. Chores around the house or errands that ease the burden of responsibility are the loving characteristics of this love language. This can be as simple as taking out the trash, paying the bills, doing the dishes, picking up the kids from school, and so on. Broken commitments and laziness can make this type feel unloved. And lastly, physical touch. This doesn't necessarily mean sex. If hugs, cuddling, holding hands, and thoughtful touches are the most important thing to you, then this could be your love language. If their physical presence is crucial to you, then this could be an indicator as well. Any kind of neglect or abuse would destroy this type of person and their relationship. So which one do you most strongly identify with? Keep in mind, you should only have one primary love language. Sure, we may like all those things, but one of them should resonate with you the most. Really think about each one and imagine your partner doing each one in turn and see how you feel. If you're still having a hard time, let's look at a couple ways to figure out your love language. First, examine your childhood. How did your parents express their love to you? What made you feel loved? That may have translated to how you now express and receive it. Another way is to ask, what's your first instinct when you want to show someone you love them? Trust your instinct. And the third way is to look at how you've been hurt deeply in the past. What hurt the most? Exploring that can help shed light on what your love language is. If you still don't know, go take the quiz over at 5lovelanguages.com. Now that you know your love language, think about these love languages from your partner's perspective. Can you identify their love language? I highly suggest you ask them to take the quiz instead of assuming what it is. Remember, what we think is an act of love may not be seen that way by your wife, your husband, or your partner. It really is vital that we learn and understand their love language if we want to make them feel loved. So, find your partner's love language and speak it. Do something special once a week to fill up what Dr. Chapman calls their love tank. Your love tank is like the gas tank in a car. You want to fill it up and keep it full. When your tank is full, your love life will be at its best, and a full tank can keep you going through trying times and relationship difficulties. If you're not consistently filling up the tank, you'll be running on fumes and eventually you'll burn out. Now, if your relationship's already running on fumes, then it'll take a while for the love tank to get full, so keep at it, keep speaking their love language, and over time, your relationship will start going in the right direction. And another big takeaway from the book, Dr. Chapman explains that love is a choice. It's something that you can control. It's a feeling, and even if you lose some of those feelings over the course of a marriage or any other long-term relationship, you can choose to do the actions first, and the feelings of love will follow. It sounds a little counterintuitive, but it works.
Okay, so And looking at that, how do you feel loved? That's the big question. What makes you feel loved? Is it words of affirmation? Do you need to be told, over and over that you're loved, you're special? I'm thank the Lord that He brought us together. Those words of affirmations are very much needed by people. Some people are talkers. They express themselves and they talk, they talk through their feelings. They talk through who they are. And so it seems like they're always talking. And everyone's different, right? And again, I hope Nita doesn't mind sharing some of our little idiosyncrasies. But, her and I, we can go on a trip and we could sit there in the car and go for miles and not say a word. Now, I remember one of the Swain girls driving home with us. Which one was it? Alexis. So she's in the back seat, and we're driving. I forget how far we were going, but she happened to be in our back seat. We're driving along like we normally do, and we're not saying a word. And she's like, "Is it always so quiet in here?" and Nita and I look at each other because sometimes we're on a trip and we'll go, "Oh, I should say something," But we're not idle conversationalists. We just don't just say stuff to fill the air. We just don't, and that's just who we are. We're both the same that way. But when we need to talk, I think our communication is really good. And, we talk to each other a lot, but it's not just in random, about whatever. It's just that's who we are. But not everyone's like that, and we get that, right? So sometimes, your mate, you might have someone that you're married to, or maybe you'll be married to someday that talks a lot. And that needs to be something that is expressed. This is how I need you to listen. And listening, as someone's listening to you. And that they're also, affirming you with language, with those kind words. We can't say enough kind words. We can't show enough kindness in our speech to the one we love. The world is tough enough as it is. There's all these images out there of what people are supposed to look like and what they're supposed to say and, all this other stuff. And we need to affirm each other. There's also the quality time that he mentioned, full, undivided attention. Being able to sit down and have the conversation with the cell phone off, with, going for a walk, whatever it might be, that undivided attention. A lot of times guys will get home, and especially if mom's home with the kids, and she's about ready to pull her hair out, and she needs some attention. She needs her tank filled up. She needs that investment, that undivided attention. That takes time, doesn't it? Because the lawn needs mowed. All this other stuff needs to be done. But all that stuff gets in the way of the relationship. And so this quality time is very, very important, whether going to a movie, going out on a date, whatever it might be. Some people value that, and I think most people actually value that one. Receiving of gifts, again, the emphasis was it's not how much money you spent. It's like Dad bringing flowers. It's not the money that's spent. It's the act of just wanting to be kind, wanting to show affection in this way, and to be able to say, hey, money doesn't mean anything. I just want to give you something because I was thinking about you. It's not your birthday, I know. It's just today. So sometimes people, like that, and that's how they feel loved. It doesn't have to be, again, as he pointed out, that you're greedy and you're materialistic. These things, are just acts of kindness. The physical touch, some people are huggers. They like to cuddle, and that quality time is very much needed. Some people don't touch at all. They just kind of, they didn't grow up in a home that hugged. I tell you the truth, whenever I was growing up, hugging my parents wasn't a thing that I really did much. It was after I became a Christian that I began to hug my dad. And I don't know why that was. And at first it was a little awkward, to hug my dad. But after a while, that's how we, showed that care for each other. But when you're talking about a mate, who grew up in a household maybe that didn't hug much, well, they're probably not going to hug much. But you might need hugged. So again, it's trying to figure out what that person needs, even though it's not what I would want. See, that's the point. That's not exactly how I feel loved. If Nita appreciates flowers, and I'll ask you later if you do, that's how I might show her love. But I would feel really weird she got me flowers. That's just not how I feel loved. Now, maybe some tools. I feel real love with some tools. Gift card to a tool shop. But, again, we're trying to figure out how to feel loved. Acts of service. Again, I think this one's almost universal. Today life's busy, and we're trying to take the load off of our mate. That's what we're trying to do. And acts of service and kindness, you're trying to make it easier for that person. If they've been working all day, you want them to come home and have a little bit of, So dividing everything up is in my mind just not right. Well, I'm the guy, and this is old school thinking, by the way, where the man would come home and sit down and dinner, and okay, you feed me dinner because you're the woman, you're the wife, and the laundry, what laundry? Some guys never did laundry. Now, I must admit, I'm not very good at laundry because there's no rules. There's no rules to laundry. I can't just stuff everything in there, and I want to help Nita, and I'm learning, but it's still kind of a weird thing, whites and blacks and darks and all that other stuff. So I don't get it, but Nita doesn't know how to change oil in a car. So what we excel in our own gifts, but also we cross over. And I find that to be very, very good, that we're trying to lift the burden of life, of dealing with just things around the house that are common, the day-to-day. So these acts of service, again, some people might, that's really how they feel loved. I know that some ladies feel they are not loved because their home's not taken care of, because the house isn't taken care of, and they don't feel loved. But whenever the husband does something for the house, because that's the home, that's where you're raising your kids, that's the castle. So that's how it's translated, you see. So he takes care of the house, does things that, normally ladies don't do, so that they will feel loved. So the big question is, how do you feel loved? In this series, every week, I was supposed to tell you to have some kind of a conversation on the way home, a kind of a sit down on how you feel loved. If you can't do that on the way home, do it sometime this week. How do you feel loved? To ask that question if you're married. Again, and it's an important question. And to express how you feel loved by your mate. And I know that, not everyone in here is married, but pass this on. These things that we talk about with marriage, it's great if you're married and you're here and you can apply these things, but there are a lot of people out there who are married who have terrible marriages. And, they're not productive. They're not flourishing. So be that person who can take some of this to them and help them with this. Give them ideas. So as we learn together about, being married and staying in the covenant of marriage, then we can share this with the folks around us. So make every effort and make it count. Now I want to share one more thing with you because I found a way to resolve the problem with the alarm clock years and years ago. And I know that Nita, she was perturbed with me. So I believe it was that very same day, after feeling all this tension, thought, well, the only way I'm going to, take care of this, resolve this, is to write her a poem. Would you like to hear it? This is a copy because the original is yellow. It's so old. Here it is. To my wife, whom I love. Nita and Len stayed up all night. They looked crazy in others' sight. They took the youth to the Y and finished the morning with a sigh. They went to bed to rest their bones, but Lynn didn't want to be a clone. He set the alarm to get up quick, for he had many things to fix. But when the alarm went beep, 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 Lynn was comfortably fast asleep. Nita awoke quite disturbed from that awful noise she heard. She rapped old Lynn on the head with annoying voice, "Get out of bed!" He reached over with a slap, hit the snooze for a longer nap. You know, time flies when you're asleep, and before you know it, beep, beep, beep. Lynn tried to arise from the bed, but could not do as he said. Nita was disturbed by her mate, and that was all she could take. For the last time the alarm went beep, the peaceful sleep she could not keep. She told old Lynn to stop that beep, but there he lay fast asleep. And when she read it, she smiled. Goofy things that we'll do, irritating things that we'll do, but we work through it. Don't take yourself so seriously. You make mistakes. It's the way it is. Show grace, the same grace God has shown you. Care for that person unconditionally. Love them. We're going to have a hymn of decision and hope that in some way, this, again, helps you move your relationship along. And for those who have been married many decades, you know that some of the things that we're sharing here are very true. That, love in the covenant of marriage does not break. You just don't break the covenant. You're married and that's it. And you, over time, learn how to love that person in a way they truly